We're always taught that being a good person, being kind, being helpful, is the right way to be. But what if I told you that those very same qualities might be making you a magnet for toxic people? Today, we're diving into that really counterintuitive idea, using a little help from Carl Jung.
So let me ask you this. Does this feel familiar? You bend over backwards to be kind, patient, empathetic, but somehow it just feels like you've put out a giant welcome mat for all the emotional vampires in your life? Well, if you feel that way, you are not imagining it. And there's a fascinating psychological reason why it keeps happening.
And here it is. This is a central paradox we're exploring. The idea that your goodness, your whole commitment to people-pleasing, your deep-seated aversion to conflict, that might be the very thing that's attracting the people who drain you the most. It's a tough pill to swallow, but stick with me.
Okay, so how does this actually work? I mean, how can being good be a bad thing? Well, to understand it, we need to look beneath the surface, at something the legendary psychologist Carl Jung called our emotional cracks. Think about toxic people for a second. The source material describes them as having this almost animal-like instinct, like sharks smelling blood in the water. But here's the key. They aren't necessarily looking for weak people. No, they're looking for repressed people. They can somehow sense what you're hiding from yourself.
And that brings us to a core Jungian idea, the shadow. Now, let's be clear. This isn't about being evil or some dark, sinister thing. The shadow is just all the normal, human parts of yourself that society, or maybe your family, taught you were bad or unacceptable. It's your capacity for anger, your healthy self-interest, your ambition, all the stuff we're told to push down.
This chart lays it out perfectly. I mean, look at this. On the left, that's the good you that you show the world, kind, patient, selfless. But on the right, that's the other side of the coin, the parts that get stuffed into the shadow. For every bit of selflessness you show, there's a part of you that has its own needs. For every ounce of calm, there's a natural, healthy anger that's getting pushed way, way down. And here's the punchline. Pushing all that stuff down doesn't make it disappear. Of course not. Jung believed this repression creates vulnerabilities, these emotional cracks. It's this energy that just kind of leaks out of you. The source calls it emotional blood. And yep, that is exactly what those predators are sniffing for.
This quote just brilliantly explains why manipulators get under our skin so much, right? When you meet someone who shamelessly acts out the very things you've forbidden in yourself, like being super demanding or unapologetically selfish, it triggers this massive emotional reaction in you. Why? Because they're basically holding up a mirror to your own denied shadow.
So, if repression is the problem, what on earth is the solution? Well, it's not about becoming tougher or growing a thicker skin in the way we usually think about it. It's actually about becoming whole. It's about forging what Jung called psychic integrity.
So what is psychic integrity? It just means you stop fighting your shadow. You stop pretending you don't have a capacity for anger or selfishness or a desire for power. Instead, you turn around, you acknowledge these parts, you understand them, and you bring them into the fold. They stop being these hidden vulnerabilities and actually start becoming your internal guardians.
I absolutely love this quote from Jung because it's just so empowering. Think about it. When you're no longer afraid of your own so-called dark side, you can recognize it and deal with it in other people from a place of strength, not a place of fear or reactivity. Your self-awareness literally becomes your ultimate shield.
Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, but how do we actually do it, right? Let's move on to the practical stuff, the steps you can take to build this inner shield. It really boils down to this clear, three-step framework. First, you just have to acknowledge that those shadow traits exist in you, and that's okay. Then, you practice a new way of responding called emotional neutrality. And finally, you start to forge boundaries that actually start from the inside out. Let's really zero in on neutrality, because this is a total game changer. A manipulator feeds off your emotional reaction. They want you to get upset. They want you to frantically explain yourself and defend your position. Your emotional energy is literally their food. So when you instead offer them a calm, conscious, serene silence, you cut off their supply. You're just not giving them anything to hook into, and their power over you completely deflates. And this brings us to the most profound shift of all, internal boundaries. See, we usually think of boundaries as things we say to other people, like, no, you can't do that. But the real boundary, that's internal. It's the moment you decide you no longer need a toxic person's approval to feel okay about yourself. When you're willing to be misjudged by them as cold or selfish in order to protect your own integrity, that's when they lose all their leverage. That is real power. So what happens when you do this work? When you start integrating your shadow and building that inner shield? Well, you fundamentally change the kind of environment you are for other people. You become, for lack of a better term, inhospitable territory. Just think back to where we started, with this idea that predators are drawn to the scent of repressed energy, that emotional blood leaking from your inner wounds and cracks. That's the before picture.
But after doing this work, you become what the source material so beautifully describes as a hard, smooth stone. Think about that image. There are no cracks. There's no emotional blood leaking out. There is simply no place for a predator to sink their teeth in.
So the transformation is this. You just become inhospitable territory. And what's amazing is manipulators don't fight you. They just get bored. They wander off to find an easier target. But here's the best part. Your entire energetic signature changes. You stop attracting the predators and you start attracting healthy people, people who value the whole, integrated, authentic person you've become.
And I want to leave you with this final thought to just chew on. We spend so much time trying to build up these walls and defenses against the world. But what if the strongest protection you can possibly have isn't something new you have to construct, but something old you just need to reclaim? The power, the anger, the self-interest, all those parts of you that are just waiting for you to welcome them home and let them keep you safe.